Why, hello. My job kind of blows, but that's
What?
okay, because we're here to play.
Here to play.
Kind of.
That's what they say.
We're actually going to talk about playing in, exactly, we're going to talk about modules and stuff, and try to be entertaining. I had a joke for
And
this,
stuff.
but I lost it.
You had a joke?
So, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Probably. Not really. I'm having a pretty good hair day after I got out of the shower, though.
That's good.
It's nice and pretty. Yeah. I'm
Glad to hear that.
debating just letting it grow. I did shave a little bit, for you guys, so you're welcome. You're still growing very, very thick, I see.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. Just kind of letting it go forever and always.
I'm kind of envious, to be honest. I wish I could grow something that massive.
Yeah, you know.
Wow, that sounded really dirty. Anyway,
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. With that, hi everyone. Welcome to the Flycast. Better late than never. Steve's work
Remember
is
that.
being a butt, and
They
apparently,
suck ass.
apparently being off at 7 means that you're off at 8 now.
much.
So that's good news. But hey, we're here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. If you're new around here, I'm John. That's Steve. We are a couple of nerds who love playing D&D, have a lot of DM experience between the two of us, and decided, hey, let's start a podcast where we just talk about this stuff and whatnot, because
Right.
got people asking us questions and whatnot all the time, and figured this would be fun and entertaining and a good way to kind of spread knowledge and just continue to talk about this hobby that we love so much.
Right.
So that's what we do. If you're not a part of the Discord yet, please go ahead and wherever you're watching or listening to this, there should be a link somewhere. Go ahead and join the Discord. That way you can hear about what we are going to talk about next week beforehand, leave questions, all that fun stuff. But what we normally do here is kind of have a topic, talk about that for a while, then take questions on the back end. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in here today. Today, our topic is modules versus homebrew campaigns. I think it's pretty interesting. I think when I first started playing, especially when I first started running games, I kind of had a bad, like I thought badly, I guess, about modules, and was only really interested in homebrew content, and I've kind of grown to find a good balance between the two. So figure this could be a fun discussion, so we'll just kind of start talking about it. So
Right.
Steve, what is your thought? This is how we start these conversations. I just say, Steve, what do you think about X? And then we go from there.
And then
So
I'll rattle on for a country mile. Yeah.
right. So what do you think
I'm the
about
same.
modules versus homebrew content?
Honestly, it depends on the module, to be honest. And I'm from the same belief. Like we just wanted to, and I think it's mainly because we were just brand new. We had all these cool ideas, and
Mhm.
we wanted to really express those ideas, and we
Right.
felt, and still in some cases feel like a module can be limiting. But
Yeah.
I think the thing that we've both learned along the way is a module is only limiting if you're not willing to change some things about it. So
Yeah.
as long as you're doing your due diligence, a module can be great. And let me explain why. We all go through this, and I'm probably guilty of it as much as anybody. Is we get burned out, man. Like we do. Like you can only have so many thoughts and so much creativity before you feel like you're rinsing and repeating. So it's nice to like, okay, one campaign ends, and guys, hey, what do you think about this? I have this idea. Let's run this. Because I even told some of my other people, I was like, I'm still thinking about running Storm King's Thunder because I bought it. It's just
Yeah.
chilling in Fantasy Grounds in the background, which there is a question by Megan that we'll tie into that later. Yeah, that's why I saw that. I was like, well, I actually have an answer for that.
Right.
But but it's nice to like take a break because like if you've got all this creative energy, you've built this world. Let's be honest, every campaign ends. It either ends, and most of the time we've got a really good track record of it ending just because the story is done.
Hmm.
The characters are godlike creatures at this point,
Right.
and we just have a good start and starting knowledge. It's just like I try to explain it to people. It's a gut feeling of when it needs to end. So when it ends, we want to try to have an idea of what we're doing next. I think the great thing about a module is, let's say you don't want to run 1 to 20, okay? Because we do that a lot with the homebrew content. We
Yeah.
can go from 1 to 20.
Yep.
We've done it for several. A module only takes you like, let's just use that one. Let's use, like, there's 1 to 5. That was a fun one. Sometimes you can go 1 to 11. Curse of Strahd. That's my favorite module.
No,
by far.
really.
Well, just in case somebody's new, they don't know.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, Steve, Curse of Strahd." Yeah, I mean, that's the running gag, as I love. And let me tell you why, because I think Strahd is the ultimate bad guy. He's a guy that you want to feel sorry for, but you can't, because he's an evil bastard, and he is so fun to play as a DM, because he's just everywhere. He's not like a video game where you see him at the beginning of the game, you don't get to see him till the end of the game, and then you whoop on him. No, he's everywhere all the time. Such a fun thing to do. There's other modules that I want to try that I haven't yet, but I think a module is a great break from us creative types when we feel like we've exhausted so much energy. And even to this day, like, you ran us through another module, but you changed a lot of it yourself. So I think they both have a place nowadays. Is like, at first I think I was an elitist and said a module is not for me.
Yeah, same.
And then I realized it's nice when someone else at least gives me a outline, and I can change it if I see fit.
Yeah.
Or I can adjust it as the player's actions determine. So that's my first thought process on that. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. I think when I first kind of started running stuff, I was more of the mindset of, and to be honest, like a pretty prideful mindset of like, oh,
yeah,
those you guys are running modules just because you can't come up with your own thing. You're so dumb. I'll come up with something. Like, come on, that's not. I mean, some people maybe run modules because they have no creativity, but like that's not.
What is
the
it,
main
like
reason.
5 campaigns later, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
what
exactly,
do I do?
Exactly.
I need content.
So like that said though, like I love like that whole world building aspect. I like to come up with my own thing. I like to not feel limited or constrained by a module. I like to be able to come up with my own thing. That's what I prefer. Like, I prefer to make a homebrew campaign and really kind of like just go crazy with it. But I've really come to find the like. I mean, modules aren't just for lazy people, right? Like, you still have to do a ton of work.
Oh yeah, you gotta read it.
I think, you hit on some really cool things. Like, you can still twist a lot of stuff and modify a lot of stuff in a module. Like, I've run a couple of modules before, but modified them to fit in my world. Like, just because Waterdeep Dragon Heist is called Waterdeep Dragon Heist doesn't mean it has to take place in Waterdeep.
Right, exactly.
In fact, I think it worked really well in Stormcastle, my own city. I certainly had to do a good bit of maneuvering to make it work, but I think it worked really, really well. And there's a way that you can kind of give them new life too, right? Like, a couple of you guys were familiar with the Dragon Heist kind of plot line to an extent anyway, when we ran it in my game, but it still kind of felt fairly fresh with kind of the changes that I was able to make to it. We've done Strahd multiple times. You can do that different ways. Different things like that. I think I think while there are some limitations inherent in running a module, it's not as limiting as you might think to begin with. There's so much that you can do to kind of like breathe new life. Plus, I really do agree with what you said about it being like a little bit of a break. Like, there's still, don't get me wrong, there's still a ton of work. Like, thinking that modules are less work than homebrew, I think is just not true. With homebrew, there's a lot of work because you have to build the whole world. world, but you can build it as little as you want to at a time, and if someone asks a question and you haven't thought that far ahead already, you can just make it up and there's no consequence to it. Just write it down and figure it out later. Whereas if you get into a module and you didn't read the whole thing yet, you're only partway through, and someone asks a question about a certain area and you haven't read that yet and you don't know, you have to either you make something up, in which case you might totally screw yourself 2 steps down the story, or you just have to tell them, you know what, I don't really know, I'll answer that question at another time, which kind of takes everyone out of the story. So you really need to prep yourself and read ahead and know the setting, because there is probably an answer to all those questions somewhere in that source book. You have to familiarize yourself with that. You're not the expert on the world. You have to read up on the world. So there's still a ton of prep to do with a module. The difference is it's not as much like creative strain on you necessarily. It's more study than like having to kind of come up with something. And while I love the creative outlet, that's my favorite thing about D&D, is being able to build a world and kind of come up with story and kind of be creative and build this whole thing. Sometimes it's just like, oh crap, I got to prep something for this week and I just have no idea. And it's really nice to be able to just be like, what does the book say happens?
Yeah, but then like I think along the same lines, let's go back to the work aspect, because then like with the creative type, you're gonna see something. I'm like, hey, that doesn't fucking make sense to me at all. Well, what if I do this? You believe it or not, sometimes you can actually put in more work into the module than what you probably should.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true, but you at least like again, you have like the prompts and everything at least, right? So you're not just pulling out a blank slate, come up with something. It's like, okay, the book says X, I kind of understand, but like this whole thing is kind of weird, so I'm just gonna change that and mess with it a little bit. Like one good example I have of that is when I ran Curse of Strahd. There's this character Van Richten, who is a legendary monster hunter or whatever in the world of D&D, I guess. But like, my players are going to have no idea who this person is when they come across him, so who cares what his name is? And because Strahd pulls in people from all places, times, and realms, I changed it and pulled in John Constantine from the DC universe, because I love John Constantine. Cool. I think that's really cool, and that was a fun way of being like, yeah, he's basically a monster hunter as well, but like, people kind of like that I figured that would kind of engage my players a little bit more, and I thought it was cool, and it worked pretty well. So like, I really like that. But like, I had an idea, like I already had a prompt basically for what I was going to do. Like, you did all the same things that Van Richten did. He just had a little bit different stat block, a different name, and a different personality. But otherwise, he served the exact same purpose, and I didn't have to come up with like this NPC to give a quest or anything like that. Like, all that you really had to do is like,
you just had to change a few things about him and like how to do it, which I really liked it. As a matter of fact, when you did it, I was like, man, I wish I would have thought of that. I was like, but I think I did. I think when I did it the first time, I just made him from your world. I thought that was kind of interesting, just to like give it a little bit of a flavor, because eventually, like, I love my airships, let's be honest, and I thought it would be kind of cool to get you guys into Castle Ravenloft via airship and like set up this, because like in the module, it doesn't say anything about the realm uniting against Strahd. If anything, it's quite the opposite. They're too afraid. They've actually tried it once before, and they know how well that went. So I had the party, you know, because I basically made the party like a prophecy kind of ordeal, which I thought was cool. Like, I changed that part of the module to like, Madame Eva gives these fortunes to adventurers all the time, but this particular group of adventurers was different. They can actually have real change to the cycle that keeps repeating itself. So I thought it was cool, as I gave Because like if you go straight by the module, even if you beat Strahd, a month goes by, he comes right back.
Yeah. Yep.
How lame is that? So you're like,
I actually kind of like that, but I definitely understand why you would not. Yeah.
right? Because like you feel like you've done all this thing, and like because like you and then because you give the party members because the gates of Barovia open, right? So you can go home, but some characters choose not to go home, and
Right.
they'd be like, I want to make a life here because like if you don't kill the NPCs, I know. I know what's her name says because she says she's not going to go because she has her doubts that she'll be like that was too easy, and you're like, what do you mean that was too easy? That was incredibly difficult. We had to quest for these items. No, I don't think something's right. So she'll volunteer to stay behind, and sure enough, 30 days later, the dark powers resurrect him. He doesn't
Yeah.
resurrect himself. The dark powers bring him back, and the reason why they bring him back is because no one has taken his place.
Yep. And I think like we've both run it once and have changed things in it. So I think
Right.
that's why we talk about it so much. Is it's a good one
Right.
to kind of like pull from examples and whatnot.
Opinion, it's the best. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, I know.
my homie, my DM inspiration wrote it, so of course I'm.
Yeah,
And let's be
yeah.
honest, Mr. Perkins is an asshole to players sometimes. I'm actually considering who I like as a DM. I'm actually considerably nice compared to him, and maybe that's because I've seen what he's done to his players, and I've seen the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, my favorite DM wrote the majority of that one, so
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah,
stoked.
I think just kind of like back to the topic of module versus homebrew. I think it also kind of depends on what players you have as well, and kind of like your DM level too. Like
Right.
I think to be honest, I think for like a first time DM just starting out, man, just get a module. Like
There is nothing
just get
wrong with
Lost
running
Minds or something
mines.
like that. And once you kind of like begin to get familiar with kind of like how to run and everything, then yeah, sure, go ahead and start to build a little village on your off time, and eventually bring people into that and whatnot, and that can be a lot of fun. But yeah, I would not do what I did and build an entire world and then start running, because I made lots and lots and lots of mistakes, so much so to where I'm kind of glad I scrapped the first campaign and just kind of like
I actually enjoyed
rebooted it.
what you did, though. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I
Just
like
from a
that.
player
I love
standpoint.
my world. I just think I made a lot of errors. Like I named every noble in Granada. Like,
Yeah.
whatever, man. Like, that's just unnecessary. Like, I don't need to do that. And at this point, like, I have a lot of names because we've met a lot of people. So, like, it's all stored somewhere. But, like, now there's actually a reason to have that name. You
Right.
don't need to do that your first time out. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. And that's, I mean, that's, just kind of like we've talked a lot about the good things about modules. I think that's a good thing about homebrew is I kind of touched on it before, but again, you are the expert on your world. So, for
Right.
instance, party needs to go and speak to a certain NPC. You can, if you haven't made one, you can make them up on the fly, write down the name, what they're like, the name of the shop they went to, whatever. Just figure it out and slap it in later. Write a note so that if they come back, you're familiar with that. Whereas if that's happening in a module, like it's very possible that there are named NPCs that they should be talking to, and if you don't have all that information in front of you, or you haven't studied that, you could screw things up later on, and mess stuff up there. So it's really nice to be able to be the expert on your world and be able to like have that license to kind of make stuff up on the fly, because that's
Right.
I mean half of DMing is prep and the other half is improv, really.
Improv. Yeah.
And being able to like have that license to be like, yeah, I can say whatever I want to because it's my world. I made it. I can change things whenever, is really nice. Because you can really find yourself in a hole if you don't know the answer to kind of something in the book.
I think the other thing about the advantage of being a homebrew world is what story are you wanting to tell, not only as a
Mm-hmm.
DM but as your players. And a lot of times I like to chat about the game with the players without revealing too much, but I like to try to get feelers out there with the
Yeah.
story that we're telling. And I think the advantage with a homebrew system is you don't have any preconceptions unless you've come up with them yourself, to where
Yeah.
you know where your end game is eventually going to go, and you might not know it right at the beginning. Like, I've had some campaigns where I'm like, I know exactly where this is going to go. I know exactly how it's going to end. It's the journey to get there.
Right.
But there's also been campaigns where I'm like, I have no fucking clue where this is going to go. When's it going to get there? And we're going to have to find out together.
That's I mean that's usually what I do when I do homebrew games. So like my Thursday night game, which we're gonna have tomorrow.
Woo!
It I have this first kind of arc planned out. I've got plans for what they're gonna do through level 3, 4, maybe 5. But after that, like, I have no idea after that. I'm starting to
Right.
kind of maybe come up with some stuff that I think is cool, but that's what I like to do. You can kind of bounce off your players and what they are enjoying and find interesting and where they want to go, and you can kind of like go in that direction. That's a great thing about homebrew is like the book says this is the story, but what happens if the players say, okay, yeah, I understand that this is the story. I was really intrigued by this thing that you were talking about, though, and it's like, well, sorry, the book doesn't say anything more about it,
Right.
so I
We're
need
going
to
to need to change
somehow steer you
directions.
back to this way. Whereas with homebrew, you can be like, oh, you're interested in that? Great, well, let's do that then. Also, like,
Right.
I really like to be able to throw just a bunch of stuff at my players, see what sticks, where they want to go, and then build out that arc. That's the Wine Women Adventure Tour, that you guys have like
Right.
4 or 5 different plot hooks that are hanging over your head, and you're like, yeah, we're gonna hit that and then that, but right now we want to hit this. And so I'm like, okay, great. Like, I have ideas for this other stuff, and it's just kind of brewing up there somewhere, but like, this is what I need to plan out right now. In that way, you can kind of like begin to get ideas for further on down the line, while planning out another thing, and that way you don't necessarily like get burnt out on that creativity either. That's a good way to kind of like, I'm kind of thinking about these ideas right here. That way, when we get done with this arc, like, I kind of have an idea of what I need to plan next, rather than being like, oh crap, now what? And I got to go back to a module again or something.
Exactly. That is exactly the thing. Like, and I know there's certain things like during my break, like, because I actually feel like I needed this. Some of the things I'm trying to, like, in the back of my mind that I want to work on, especially with homebrew content, is letting the players explore without, like, at the same time being too railroady, because like
Yeah.
I am a little bit of a railroader, but like, also getting their opinion on what they want to do, because I've heard both arguments. 'Cause, like, well, we just want to be told what to do. I've got other players who just want to role play, so trying to find the balance for a DM is difficult.
You have
Of
players
like,
who just want to be told what to do?
I do. I do.
Mm.
My newer guys, before I had to take the sabbatical, I was like, "Hey guys," and I was very open and honest about it. I was like, "You're at the end of this major story point. You're gonna have 6 months of downtime. After that, what would you like to do? Would you like to explore this world that I have, or would you like to continue with the main storylines?" They didn't. They're like, "Tell us what to do. We don't know." I'm like,
I mean,
"Okay."
I guess I can see that as a new player thing. Like, I don't know, until you
I
kind of
don't
realize
know.
that you can do anything and kind of
Right.
explore whatever you want
I was
to.
like, I've given you this entire map
Yeah,
that I have major cities built out. We can
yeah.
have ourselves some mini adventures. So
I'd
it's
say
like,
this
now
is
if I want to give
probably,
that to Tuesday people, they're like, fuck yeah, let's go anywhere we want, you know?
yeah. I'd say this is, we've kind of talked about it a little bit in probably like that first episode where we're talking about open world versus narrative driven, but like, I think railroading gets a bad rap because I mean, like it's just a bad term, right? Like, no one wants to be
Right.
railroaded. And when you say it's railroady, what most people think of is, oh, so like you have to do things this exact way or you fail. And
Right.
yeah, in that sense, railroading is terrible. But there is something to be said for like, no, I mean, this is the plot, this is the story, like this is the direction
plot, yeah.
that you guys need to go, and helping the party like kind of move along those roads. I think I think railroading in that aspect is not a bad thing, and it can be a good thing. It kind of it's one of those things that's neither a vice nor a virtue necessarily. It has a time and place for sure.
I think it was just me trying to like, okay, I have this big world. And guys, we want to grow as DMs too, so we're going to experiment
for sure.
So we want to grow. We're always looking to challenge ourselves, and I'm not saying challenge the players as far as difficulty is, but we're like challenge the players and how they think creatively. So
yeah.
I do believe that with a homebrew content, you have a little bit more of leeway there, to where you can adjust your story. Like you may, if like say like in this instance, like my last campaign that I ran. Well, even let's just use Eberron because I don't have an end game for that. It's a challenging campaign for me, honestly. I don't really have an end game, so like offering them to like, okay, you guys got transportation, your debt is cleared off with what's his name because that's ultimately the end of that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to do now? And, and there's this huge world. Now, the one advantage to that is it's not a module, but it is a book that I've used.
It's a source book.
So it's a source book. So the advantage there is you got all these cities.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to take the time to create them, but I also have the flexibility to say if you guys go there, have like a nice like thematic picture, make shops up as I go, because that's like I'm good with the improv. I'm not as good with the building part, but go from there and try to open it up. So I really feel like the homebrew stuff gives me a little bit more leeway. Because, like, if they go somewhere, I can make up a city like that on the fly.
Yeah.
I don't have to have a map. We can do that, theater of the mind until I find something.
Yeah.
And kind of go from there.
Yeah, I'd say source books are interesting because they're like that in-between ground, right? Because
literally right there in the middle.
The source book doesn't. Some of them have like little quests and whatnot in them, but it's not it's not a campaign. It's just a setting. That's interesting if you're having like a hard time coming up with, building an entire world, but you've got a good plot idea. Man, those setting books can be a great way to go. Pick up Eberron or pick up Storm Coast Adventure Guide, or what else do we got?
Yeah, those are good ones.
Icewind Dale, I know, has actual like a quest line and everything in it, but it is more or less a setting book also.
See, I wanted to try that at some point too, honestly.
Yeah. Mythic Goddesses of Theros, that's another one. I'm just kind of looking at my shelf right now. What else do we have?
Yeah, you just look
Ghosts
at
of Saltmarsh. They've got quests in there, but it's more of a setting book. So yeah, I mean those are some really good ones if you're kind of having a hard time like coming up with a world or building a world, and you don't necessarily want to do that, but you've got a good plot idea, and you don't necessarily need the help from the book. You want to make your own NPC, make your own story, but you don't want to build your city. Yeah, I think that can be a great thing for sure. A good little in between. I haven't really done a whole lot of that. I like to world build too much.
Yeah, you're clearly though much better at it than me. So like
that's my favorite part.
The only problem I have with that sometimes with me is like I'm like this Lord of the Rings kind of obsessed nerd, and I like heroic stories. So whenever I get out of my comfort zone, admittedly as a DM, it does make it a lot harder.
Yeah.
So the source books are nice too, but yeah.
All right, well, we are about halfway through, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we will be right back with some questions. You can go ahead and throw more in the chat there if you want, but we're going to go ahead and answer those from Discord. We will be back in about 3. Peace out!
Gonna bring me a fatty-ass milkshake and a big old fat burger. Sexy. You ever wonder what I talk about when we're on our breaks? Food.
Apparently burgers and milkshakes.
Hell yeah, man. When you got a family that runs the Steak and Shake, there is certain advantages. Although I think once I get my body to where I can move a little bit more, because because I'm getting ready to go part-time with this job. I think I'm going to try to help out a day or so a week at the restaurant, try to help out. So go back to the family business, boys.
Right on. I had food delivered in the first half here, so I'm just finishing my fries. Don't
judge you. Okay, I won't. There is no DoorDash in Brownstown, Indiana.
Well, by delivered, I mean Megan brought it.
Oh. Okay. I don't think my sister, who's trying to help me lose weight, is going to have me let me use the truck to go to McDonald's. Yeah, free food from the family biz, my brother.
But steak and shake is okay?
You're probably right.
I'm just saying, like.
Yeah. I mean, it's better quality of meat, to be honest.
Is it though?
Yes, actually it is.
Than the double quarter
made
pounder?
From sirloin. Yep, better quality. It's nice quality meat.
I don't know if that's true anymore, though.
Oh, but it is. I know Steak and Shake's beef. Hey, James, thanks for the bits, bro.
But do you know McDonald's beef?
I used to. I used to work there briefly, and it was still beef. I thought it might be kangaroo meat for the longest time, but still beef.
They've upped
but I don't
their
think
quality
it's
for their quarter pounder, so.
For the quarter pounder, though.
Yeah, that's
Everything
what I said.
Else,
What else are you eating at McDonald's?
Occasionally you get a McDouble or something, when you're cheap or broke or something. Get like $1.25 hamburger or something,
Yeah, whatever. So we're.
I'm sorry.
This is. I thought this was a D&D podcast. Apparently, it's a McDonald's podcast.
No, it's McDonald's.
So, brought to you by McDonald's.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I don't even know what their
I'm
slogan is right now. Is it "I'm loving it" still? I don't know.
I don't know, but cheap pops.
Yeah. Filet of fish, says Jazz. Okay, sure.
Jazz is the homie.
Anyway, welcome back. We are back here with the second half of the Flycast today. Again, if you guys have not joined the Discord, wherever you're watching or listening to this, there should be a link somewhere. Join the Discord. That way you can hear about the topic early, leave questions, all that fun stuff. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and take some questions from our Discord now. So, I'm going to go ahead and scroll on up, and we got quite a few today, actually. Okay, first question right here from our favorite damage slut. I think I'm just going to, go down everything in order. So, First question, what is the best/worst module, in your opinion, that you've played/ran?
The worst?
Best and worst.
Best is Curse of Strahd, hands down.
Shocker.
Hey, listen, bitch. It is the best, by far. It's got the best villain, an awesome plot hook to get players involved, and it's deadly. Especially if you started at level 1, you better. And I even warned my players. I'm normally generous to start at level 3. Because it can be difficult. But if you want to be like most DMs and you start it at level 1 to go into Curse, you better have a character idea, a backup or two. You're probably going to lose 1 or 2 characters. It is a deadly campaign, but it's also a very interesting campaign from the standpoint that it's just you're basically chasing after MacGuffins to get rid of this ultimate evil. I mean, in my opinion, there's not much better than that. The worst one I've ran. And now this is just personal opinion because, and when I ran it, I didn't think and this is purely from an aesthetic point because the Curse of Strahd spoiled me with its maps because they're beautiful, and then when you gave me Waterdeep maps, I was like, whoever drew these was like a child.
They're well-drawn, hand-drawn maps. Steve just doesn't like hand-drawn maps, that's all.
No. I want something that's aesthetically beautiful. I mean, because if I'm paying for a product, I paid the same price. Okay. I paid the same price. I'm going to break it down for Curse of Strahd that I did for this wonderful book that was written by Matt Mercer and every other dude on the thing. I like the idea that they had like these different villains that could come into play,
Mm-hmm.
but honestly, at the time when I ran it, I was just bored.
Yeah.
And that was partially on me because if I didn't like something, and this goes back to the beginning of our conversation, change it. I was
Yeah.
sticking too close to the module's story. I should have livened it up a little bit for myself. Now, given that my players loved it, we had some of our best characters and best moments from that campaign. That's why I said it's just an opinion because my players really loved it. And at the end of the day, I loved the interaction and the role play from the characters. So that's why it's kind of hard for me to say that because, like, yes, it's the worst one that I've done, but it's also one of the best ones I've done for where the characters really took that story and ran with it. So that's just me.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite is probably Curse of Strahd as well. Similar reasons. Not going to go into it. As far as worst, I really don't know. It's really hard for me to say. I'm looking over at my books right now. That's why I keep turning. That's where they all are.
Right.
And all the ones that I have anyway that I've run or seen run or played in, I've enjoyed.
There's not really a bad one per
So
se.
it's tough for me to say. I know say Out of the Abyss is supposed to be pretty dull. Well, not necessarily dull, but it's supposed to have some
It's different
massive problems with it anyway.
because you start off in prison and you got to find a way to get out.
Yeah, and
that's hard for
I know
some
there's some
players.
cool stuff about it, but I know that one's supposedly pretty difficult to kind of really grasp people. I think Hoard of the Dragon Queen, I think, is also supposedly not that great. But like I haven't played these ones, so I can't really say too much. I don't make a point of playing bad modules. I guess maybe that's
right.
it.
There's some I stay away from.
I will say I'm not a
opinion.
huge fan of Storm King's Thunder. I just think there's some massive issues with it. Like
there are some.
There's the first, like, you're supposed to be like level 1 characters, and the first encounter is like giants attacking the city, and it's like, well, pick an NPC to fight for you or something. It's like, why? Like, this is stupid. Like, can the players not play? And I know you did it different because we were higher level and whatnot, and it was great. But the way it's written in the book is just terrible. Like,
it's confusing.
So there's issues like that, but even with like the most problematic modules, you get a creative DM in there who sees the problems and is experienced and can fix it. It can be a lot of fun. Like, they weren't published books because they were crappy. There's something good in all of them. You just kind of gotta figure out how to make it work.
It's like Goodwill. You gotta sometimes go through the racks to find that gem,
Yeah. What's the hardest thing about homebrewing your own campaign? It's a good question.
Constantly trying to be creative and not feeling like you're either taking something from somebody too much or recycling bits too much. Because occasionally I'll get into this where I'll think that I've never done something before, and I have, and I'll get called out on it. And not in a negative way. I'd be like, did I really do that? Or have I done that already?
Well, I mean, it's easy to fall into the same tropes, right? Like, if every single time you start a campaign, your level 1 encounter is fighting the same 3 goblins every time because you really like goblin encounters, like, your players will catch on. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily know we're doing that. Like, say we go 1 through 20. Well, now we got to go all the way back to the beginning to balance out an encounter so we don't slaughter you.
Right.
on the first go round, which I have. I actually killed James on accident when I put in a owlbear. And I didn't balance it correctly, and it one-shot him.
It happens. Yeah,
permadeath.
I think like borrowing and taking inspiration from things is only natural, and you're supposed to do that, honestly. But too much can be kind of difficult. I think, I think for me, it's continuing the same level of effort and the same level of creativity. It can be real easy and real, and just real, tempting, I guess, to be like, Man, I'm 3 days away. I haven't come up with any great ideas. Let me just kind of recycle some old shit, kind of throw something here, and that's good enough. I'll figure it out on the fly.
Right.
And you can kind of get away with that, especially if you're experienced enough to be like, I don't want to balance this encounter right now. I'll balance it on the fly. I'll figure it out. It'll be fine. In Like, you can kind of get away with that for a little bit, but you can only get away with that for so long, and you don't necessarily want to. Like, your players might not notice it at first, but you'll start to realize that you're kind of like getting wary. On. Like, you'll be like, I don't know what to do here, so I'm just going to throw an encounter here. Well, don't. It's that right there. When you start to get just a little bit lax and a little bit lazy, if you don't have purpose for everything and really plan out and think things out, the players might not notice the first, second, third time it happens, but eventually it'll be like, why are we doing this? Like, and you'll feel it too from behind the screen. You'll be like, why did I throw this encounter out? Like, I'm just going to get rid of it. Like, it's just that level of intentionality is kind of difficult to continue the whole way through. And honestly, if you're in that rut, maybe it's good to maybe it's a good idea to take a week off or something until like it's always better to do that than to kind of give a half-hearted effort, because everyone's putting aside 4+ hours of their time to get together and do this thing. Let's have a good session rather than a mediocre one.
And there is absolutely nothing wrong with and this happened to me, like you've made an encounter and then the character's like, well, how did this giant spider get into this cellar? And you just like go, huh. You know what, guys? This is just something to get you some experience. I'm sorry, I didn't think this one through.
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think, because I mean, I don't want to rag on you. That's not a problem. Like, I mean, there's a way to answer that question. You just didn't come up with one in the moment.
No, I couldn't think of anything. I'm like,
But that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about, is where you can totally get away with that for sometimes and whatnot. You just kind of want to be like, hey, this works, it's fine. But I like to have intentionality behind it. And if I'm just kind of, like, I found myself just create a random encounter, and great, that's what they fight. And I don't like doing that. I want there to be an answer to that question of how did they get there? Why is this what they're attacking? So, I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm talking about, and that's a hard thing to do. What are a few homebrew campaign ideas you've come up with but never ran because you thought it wouldn't be fun or you thought it was dumb? Basically, are there any homebrew ideas, campaign ideas that you've trashed or maybe just haven't gotten to?
No, I can honestly say I don't think I've had anything where I've thought this won't work, because like I've went through, like I said, I've had campaigns where I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I've had campaigns start where I didn't know where it was going to go. I was like, I normally can start it off with like an idea, like maybe 1 through 3, and let's see where it goes. Mm-hmm. I can take from the characters, I can take from other inspiration.
Yeah.
I don't think I've really had anything where I'm like, no, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah, I haven't trashed anything. I've had, as far as ideas that, like, and I'm just kind of like expanding onto the question here in my own mind. As far as like ideas I haven't gotten to yet, I have 2. Both of which actually, like, I would probably use module and or information from some of these books. One is a pirate campaign. I would love to do a pirate campaign, or just like a open water campaign. We did that a little bit with Outlaws, kind of that like middle arc there. But I would love to do a whole campaign that's like that. Okay, level 1, you guys have a ship, and not only that, but one of you is the captain, one of you is the first mate. You all have roles on this ship. We're going to really flesh out ship combat. We're going to take the rules in Ghosts of Saltmarsh and really like kind of expound upon them and make them good.
Right.
And we're going to just fly with that. You guys can be privateers, pirates, whatever you want to be. But it's like, it'll be like a hex crawl just on an ocean map. I think my favorite Assassin's Creed game was Black Flag, because
Black Flag
I
was
loved
so good.
having a map of the Caribbean and just being like, I don't know, go to an island. Like, forget the Assassin's Creed part of this, just be a pirate. Like, that was awesome. And I would love to play a D&D game like that. So that's one. The other one is I would love to run Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus.
Yeah, that would be
I've
good.
read enough of it to know that there's some really fucking awesome stuff in that book.
Right.
Like there's these Mad Max Infernal Hell machines. Like it's so cool. I actually used them in the Outlaws game, but
that was fun.
Just briefly though, like you can do combat with them and whatnot in this thing. So and you're going after Zariel. Like it's really cool, and I would love to run that campaign, or at least like do more like hellish stuff. I think I kind of gravitate to that a lot because it's just they're easy bad guys to use and can be a lot of fun to play as a DM. To be honest,
yeah, man, because you get some of those like now you got to be creative and like, all right, I'm gonna come up with a deal, like like some of the devils are very ruthless.
There's a whole thing
some
on
of
like
them are
infernal
very
contracts in the book and everything too. Like it's cool. What sources do you use for your own inspiration for homebrew campaigns?
Oh man, my Midgard campaign is my love affair for Lord of the Rings and World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And Norse mythology.
Throw in some Norse mythology and call it a day.
I love a lot of mythology aspects of games. When I can do that and tie it into like a heroic arc, because if you think about the greatest books that have lasted for the longest time, like the Odyssey, anything like along those lines, they normally are tied into
Odysseys of Theros.
Exactly. Right. Well, I meant like Homer.
No, but like that's basically the campaign setting for that sort of adventure.
Right. Anything I can tie into, like, I love tying in real life things into a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
To me, that's the most fun because it gives it a little bit more of a believability standpoint, and we can expound upon our own mankind's natural, belief systems and turning it into something that we can explore. So I think that's pretty fun. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's all sorts of places to draw inspiration from, right? Whatever media you consume, whatever stories you like.
Yeah, man.
Video games, books, movies, all sorts of stuff. I've been reading a lot.
Romance of the Three Kingdoms, like that's a favorite one of mine. That's Chinese.
Yeah,
that's Chinese history.
Yep.
Based off of real life families and scenarios. I like that stuff. I mean, anything I literally, I get my hands on, just like you said, just piggybacking off of it, just coming up with those ideas, heroic bad guys. I've never used a Sauron character before. If that makes sense, but
Yeah, I mean the big bad evil lord, Dark Lord or whatever. That can be kind of that can be kind of tough to make compelling,
right?
Especially for modern audiences, but you can do it. Yeah, I mean I've been reading a lot of like fantasy novels and whatnot. That's that always helps. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Let's see here. Do you follow when creating a game? Yeah, what processes do you follow when creating a game?
When I create a homebrew?
Yeah, I'd say
normally an idea. Like, I think whenever I did Midgard because that was my first one. As I normally had an idea. I think one of my favorite ones though is when we did the world hopping. What was that? Redemption. Redemption was a cool idea because it started off with this cool idea of like, hey, what if we started this campaign at a higher level, give some players, an opportunity instead of starting off at 1, let's start it at 11 because that was a challenge in itself. But let's give them this overarching, thing that they have to go to the 9 different realms. So basically, it's a world traveling adventure. They're time traveling, so you're getting a little bit of Doctor Who in there. And then you're kind of building it out from there. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen in each world, but you're going to like take one world at a time, let it play out, and then piggyback off what the characters do. And I think the cool thing I had with that one was I'm like, hey guys, can you describe to me how you died in your first life?
Mm-hmm.
The only one who didn't die was Markle, and that's because he was the first of his kind. He was literally a child, which was fun to explore. So I like things like that when I do homebrews. It's like I personally like to get my players involved. I'm like, what do you want out of the story? Let's get
Yeah.
some ideas from them and then try to build on it as we go. Or I think when I did the last one, I had the idea from like 1 through 3, and then I was going to see where it went from there. And eventually, it ended up being a "Let's slaughter all the gods" campaign, and I'm like, okay,
Right.
and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you start with basically either an idea or a like a theme or a
theme,
plot.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with a theme. Most of the time, though, I like to start with a setting. I have my world, and that's kind of the backdrop for everything. But what I've been really enjoying is creating a new small town for each of my campaigns.
Yeah.
And I just start in a small town, and you can in an afternoon make every NPC in the town, and then you can also say plus unnamed fishermen, farmers, lumberjacks, whatever. But you can make every NPC in the town. You can make a baker, you can make a general store owner, an innkeeper, and decide what's like. I like to decide what's in this town, and then as I decide what's in this town, I think, okay, why? So this is just my approach. It may be a weird approach, but I like to world build, right? So my approach then is, okay, I'm making this town. Why does this town exist? There has to be a reason for this town to exist.
A history behind it.
Yeah. So, like, I think about, okay, why do towns exist historically? Protection, trade, that sort of thing. Okay, well, if it's trade, then what is it that this town provides? Is it just near a road that was built through to a larger city, or like maybe this town is known for maybe they're known for the clay deposits in the nearby river or whatever, and there's pottery that comes from this town. Okay, great. Then I need to make a potter, and that potter is going to be very important in the town. And then I can start to think of that, and then I can be like, okay, if this town is built off of the clay and pottery trade, then what quests can I use? Okay, something is going on with that clay deposit. Maybe the clay deposit is actually a little ways up the river, and it's been kind of taken over by bandits, and this town is like dying now because they are having problems with those bandits. Or maybe that was a site of a battlefield, and undead have risen there, and they just can't get there right now, and they need some adventurers to help there. So I started with my setting, but now I have a quest for my first session. That's how I do it. And that might be crazy and weird, but that's
I love it. I think that's awesome.
That's what I really enjoy. That's how all of my Thursday night stuff is happening right now.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think that's a great idea. It's a nice approach. It's a nice way of, like, trying to take a big world and, like, say hello to people.
Hello.
Kids are going to bed. John says hello. We're doing a podcast right now.
Oh, right. I remember you saying.
Yeah.
Wednesday nights.
Yeah. Good night, kid. She sees me goofing around while answering questions. I'm like, okay, well, hey. She's a good kid. Where was I? I think I got sidetracked. Shiz. I had that thought in my head and I just lost it. But yeah, that was my answer. I got sidetracked. Yeah, my bad.
Are there things you do differently when following a module as opposed to homebrew? Yeah, I think we can just answer this one real quick. Basically, when you're doing a homebrewed game, you just gotta make everything. So wherever you want to start is where you start. When you're following a module, just read it. Read the module.
Read it and then decide if there's something you need to change it.
Yep.
If it doesn't make sense, make it make sense for you. Change it. Don't get. Like, I got that's why Dragon Heist was lame for me. I didn't change enough of the stuff that I needed to personally change. If you don't like it, change it. Yeah. They're okay with you changing their material. They don't care. You've already given them the money.
Yeah. What's harder, creating an NPC or playing one from a module? For me, I would say playing one from a module. I think so. Creating one can be very easy. Creating a compelling NPC is certainly more difficult.
Right.
But I still think it is far easier to make an NPC that you create compelling than to play one from a module and then force them to be compelling,
'Cause then
unless you
have to,
understand
like-
it well.
Right. I mean, I think it's because, like, I was going to say, creating an NPC is not a huge issue.
Mhm.
It's coming up with, like, the backstory that they
Mhm.
have given you,
Mhm.
and then again, you're going to have to go back to that whole, I need to change this because it's not going to fit what I want it to fit.
Right. Right.
Like, I've had to change Tatiana's brother several times. I actually made him into like a shield master
Mhm.
because he's literally your tank for a lot of levels. As long as you don't piss him off.
I think that's key too, right? Is if when you're running a module and you have to play an NPC, I would say for the important NPCs anyway, make sure, or even semi-important ones, make sure you understand who they are and what their motivation is. And if you don't, if you're reading it and you're like, I don't understand why this guy is this way, or I don't understand why he would act this way or does these things, then change it. You have to understand it, and it has to make sense, or your players will be confused. I've had that happen to me when I'm a player in a game, and I think, honestly, I think that might have happened a little bit in your Dragon Heist game, because you're like, the book says this, and we're just like, but why? And you're like, I don't really know, and I didn't change it, so now everyone's kind of confused because the DM's kind of confused, and if you're confused, then change it. You can change anything in a module, so I think that is key, is make sure you understand your NPC's motivations and why they are the way they are, and if you don't, change it.
And that's why I did that, because I learned from that game. That was one of the lessons that I learned, is like, if you don't know the motivation.
And that's what makes so much sense about, like, what you were saying with Ismark too. Like, Ismark's whole motivation is protect my sister. So you gave him the shield master feat and everything, and you made him a tank. That makes a ton of sense for who he is. Like, I love that. I think that's brilliant. I think, so.
Thank you. That's high praise.
For new DMs,
I thought it was good too, but you know.
For new DMs, what would you say is easier, homebrew or module? Module. I mean, homebrew doesn't necessarily have to be tough, right? Like, you can run a very small thing, make a very small town, make one small dungeon, make one little thing, and if you're just planning on doing a session, then maybe that's the way to go. But even then, if you're just planning on doing one session, find a one-shot somewhere.
One-shots are good for that, but
I think
grab Mines.
Yeah, I think Lost Mines is a great one to start with.
It's just so well put together for a new group. Like, you can have a new DM and new players. The book even has pre-made characters for you. So like, you can even go as far as that. There's a reason why we suggest that one, because it is that good.
It really is
the perfect starting point for a new dungeon master and new players.
Yeah.
I can't recommend it highly enough.
I want to get through all these questions, so I'm going to rapid fire a couple of these. Easiest module to run, Lost Mines. I think you'll agree with that. What's the most enjoyable? I think we would both say Strahd. That said, you can find a lot of enjoyment in all of them. The most challenging, I would say it depends on what you mean by challenging. From what I've seen of Descent into Avernus, that can be very challenging. I would say, though, Tomb of Annihilation is probably the most challenging.
From a player standpoint.
To run, I don't know.
Out of the Abyss.
Maybe. I don't know that
because I know it enough to know that they're in the Underdark, they're level 1, they're in prison, and they got to find a way out. Yeah. After that, say there's a couple of the other ones that are... I know Adrian tried to run a real like at the beginning, it was really sandboxy. for
Mhm.
newer players until you get like level 5. That's when it starts to pick up.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that one was called, but he had an awful
Princess
time
of the
with that one.
Apocalypse. That one's bad.
That's it. Prince of the
Well,
Apocalypse.
again, you can find good stuff in all of them, but that one I've heard bad things about.
It was not good.
I would say challenging to run any of them that are open world, which Strahd is open world, so that can be challenging to run as well.
But they have MacGuffins.
Exactly, and that kind of narrows things down for you. Storm King's Thunder can be kind of tough because that's pretty open world. I don't know. Anyway, John, do you have module you like as much as Steve loves Strahd? No. Are there any modules made so that there's a very slim chance the players win? So winning is kind of like a strange term for D&D, right? Like, there's no winning or losing. Even if the party wipes, just make new characters and go again. I would say the closest thing that I've seen to that is probably Tomb of Annihilation, because there are death traps. You can, and there's the death curse. So if you lose a character, they're not really getting resurrected.
They're not
just
coming
make a
back.
new character. So I guess that would probably be the closest. Or maybe Strahd, because Strahd run as written, there is no way to win because he will come back, no matter what. So, I mean, I guess I would say those, but that said, like, it's really up to the DM to help the party out and make sure you're not, like, just make it fun, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, check out that D&D video. That was good.
Yeah, I loved that video. Going along the line of the Tomb one, there is, like, it gives you, like, a meat grinder mode, too. So, like, it's kind of, like, plans on it being difficult. I don't know. Okay, and last question. If your party got tired of module in the middle of it, would you be inclined to end it or try and take what you've already done and homebrew the rest of the campaign? Is there an advantage or disadvantage to doing either? And you actually had a good answer to this one, so I'll give you the floor.
Okay, so I had a player. Trevor is a wonderful player, but whenever he makes a barbarian, he doesn't normally have a solid backstory. So he's trying to use a backstory drop to give his character some spotlight. So I used Storm King's Thunder. And it was going great until we brought in the Ring of Winter, which in the module, there's nothing really that you can do with the Ring of Winter. But as like most D&D games go, the characters got interested in the Ring of Winter. I did a lot of improvisation. And I had to, and eventually they came to find the guy who had it. Now, I changed a few things about the Ring of Winter. When the NPC took the ring off, because it noticed that Trevor, what was this barbarian's name? Fuck, there's so many names. We're gonna call him Thalai for the moment.
Was it Arillo?
I remember.
I can't remember.
Arillo. It was Arillo.
They're all the same.
The ring.
They're all Goliath barbarians.
The ring is evil. The ring is so much evil that it wants to freeze and take over the world. Well, once it realized how strong and powerful Arillo is, not to mention he's quite possibly going to be able to, the ring could enslave him. The owner of the ring takes the ring off, withers and dies. And then, like, something happened where I had 2 ancient white dragons come, guys. Not an easy fight. And Arillo DMs me and says, if he puts the ring on, will the dragons go away? I'm like, yes, the ring would let you know that. So he puts the ring on. We're thinking we're going to lose a character. We don't. We get 2 characters who dimension door up on this ice construct dragon, and then I didn't read a rule and let a divine intervention go. And now the party is gone, and now then I'm like, well, that was the end of that module. We gotta homebrew the rest. But it was so much fun.
The point with all that, though, I think, is like you weren't really feeling the module all that much, and this was kind of a perfect excuse to kind of get out of it and keep going. Right. So I think I think it really depends on what it is that is kind of is dragging, right? Is the party just tired of the module but still likes their characters and wants to continue to play?
Right.
Well, in that case, yeah, I would do exactly what Steve did. I'd be like, okay, fine. Like, what do you find more intriguing? We'll go do that instead. And
right.
some other group does this, like you even did, like in that exact example. You were like, okay, this is happening in the Forgotten Realms, and Drist took care of this. Like he took care of what you guys were originally doing because you went off to do another thing. So like it was a perfect like in universe, in game, I guess, way of explaining away why it was okay that we did a different thing. So yeah, if that's the exact situation, I would say that. If the party is just like, they're not feeling the module, they're not feeling the characters, they just kind of want to do something else, then just scrap it, start something else, or end it, or whatever. If you're not having fun, then do something else, I would say. So yeah, it does depend on kind of the exact situation that's going on there, but yeah, I think forcing your way through something that you're not having fun with is probably the worst option in of any of the above.
I thought that was a good example though, because I wasn't necessarily feeling it because it was a lot of work to try to transmog levels 1 through whatever to 11 plus, and it was like we just made it fun. We took the idea of what was working and what the players were focused on, and we did some plane hopping, and that was fun. We had a character lose an arm. We had
all sorts of fun stuff.
There was all sorts of crap, guys.
Well,
I made a magic item that I regretted. You know, it is what it is.
That is about all the time we got here. We're a little bit over time. That's fine, though. Not too bad. So we are going to wrap it there. We'll go ahead and call it quits there. You can catch Steve over at twitch.tv/SteveOTheDMO. He streams over there from time to time. Destiny is a big one that he's been playing a lot of.
Yep, we're just taking a little break from it at the moment.
At some point, we'll get some D&D going on over there as well, but you can stay tuned to Discord to hear when he's going live here and there. Over here on the Fly Captain Twitch, we will be back tomorrow night with that Thursday game I was talking a little bit about. The party just killed a necromancer, and they are in a kind of a pocket plane right now, so we'll see what happens there. And then we've got some kind of things going on Tuesdays. Sometimes maybe we might be streaming on Tuesday.
A lot of one shots.
And then of course we'll be back next week with whatever the heck we decide to talk about next week. So again, hit like, subscribe, whatever, wherever you're at, all that fun stuff. Follow us on the Discord, leave questions there, and we'll see you next time. Peace out, everyone.